We were at the entrance of Yellowstone National Park by 6:15 in the morning. Since we were planning to cover both the upper and lower loops, nearly 3,400 square miles in just 2 days, we had to plan our time carefully. Our goal was to cover as many major attractions as possible while also giving ourselves a good chance of seeing some wildlife. And since we had to drive down to Grand Teton the next day, we wanted to keep day 2 a little easier. So, we started early and were ready for a long day of exploring Yellowstone. Our first stop for the day was Grand Prismatic Spring. As we got closer, we could already see steam rising from the ground. It was a cold morning, and with the hot geothermal water melting the chilly air, the area was covered in the layer of mist and condensation. Because of the early hour and the cold water, there were very few people around, which made the experience even better. The famous colors of Grand Prismatic weren't really visible that morning. The thick steam was covering most of the spring, probably because of the temperature difference between the hot spring and the cold morning air. Still, it was a beautiful sight. We walked around, took a few pictures, enjoyed the quiet atmosphere, and then headed to our next stop, Old Faithful. When we reached Old Faithful, we were pleasantly surprised by the beautiful historic lodge and the cozy little coffee shop inside. It was still early, so we decided to stop for some breakfast and a cup of coffee while we waited for Old Faithful's next eruption. Old Faithful erupts regularly, usually at intervals of around 90 minutes, so we knew we wouldn't have to wait too long. Slowly, more and more people started gathering around the geyser, waiting for that moment. And looking at the growing crowd, I was pretty sure that getting here early was one of the best decisions we had made that day. Then suddenly we saw the first sign of activity. A little steam, and suddenly Old Faithful came alive. A powerful column of hot water shot high into the air, surrounded by clouds of steam. It was such an incredible sight, especially standing there in the cold morning air and watching this natural wonder erupt right in front of us. and the excitement was contagious. The kids around us were cheering, pointing, and trying to capture the whole thing on their phones. We were all just standing there watching in awe. I think by now we were all prepared and excited for this long, hot summer day in Yellowstone. Our next stop was West Thumb Geyser Basin, right on the edge of Yellowstone Lake. This place felt completely different from Old Faithful. Instead of one big geyser, we had a whole collection of colorful hot springs, steam pools, and bubbling geothermal features spread along the lakeshore. The combination of the deep blue Yellowstone Lake, the steam rising from the hot springs, and the mountains in the distance made this one of the most beautiful stops of the day. We walked around the boardwalk, stopping at different pools and taking pictures along the way. What I really liked about West Thumb Geyser was how you could see Yellowstone's geothermal activity right next to the calm waters of the lake. It was a beautiful reminder of how much is happening beneath the surface of this incredible park. After spending some time exploring West Thumb, we got back in the car and continued our journey around the Mud Volcano, another completely different side of Yellowstone. Here, instead of colorful pools and tall geysers, we saw bubbling mud pots, steaming vents, and the unmistakable smell of sulfur in the air. We spent some time walking around the area and checking out these unusual geothermal features. Then we continued our drive towards Tower Fall. This was one of those stretches where we simply enjoyed the road, the changing landscape, and the feeling of being deep inside Yellowstone. We had originally planned to stop at the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone and the Artist Point, but we made a conscious decision to skip them this time. Our priority was to reach Lamar Valley, where there was still enough daylight, spend some time there, and then make our way back to hotel before it got dark. Sometimes on a road trip like this, you have to make those choices. There was simply too much to see and not enough daylight. So instead of rushing through the Grand Canyon and Artist Point, we decided to save those attractions for another visit and keep moving toward Lamar Valley. Then we decided to take a little detour. Near the petrified trees, we took a roughly 6 miles off-road diversion. The road became much more rugged, and it felt like we were getting away from the main tourist route. It was a fun little adventure, and it gave us a completely different view of Yellowstone. We drove through the quieter part of the park, enjoying the scenery and the feeling of being out on our own. After a little off-road adventure, we got back on the main route and continued exploring Yellowstone. As the day was coming to an end, we were making our way towards the beautiful Lamar Valley. But the real highlight of this part of the journey was the bison. As we entered Lamar Valley, they seemed to be everywhere. Herds of bison were spread across the valley, grazing peacefully and moving slowly across the landscape. And then came those incredible up-close encounters. Some bisons were right alongside the road, so close that we could almost feel how massive they were. We had to slow down and give them plenty of space as they casually crossed the road, completely unconcerned about the traffic. At times, it felt like we were driving through their world, not the other way around. And then there was Lamar Valley itself, the wide, open valley, rolling hills, distant mountains, golden evening light, and wildlife all around us made it one of the most beautiful places we had seen that day. After such a long day of exploring Yellowstone, ending it here, surrounded by wildlife and incredible scenery, felt absolutely perfect. Day 1 in Yellowstone couldn't have ended any better.